Mr. John Bain, known to most of us as Totalbiscuit, has finally succumbed to cancer. He fought long and hard, outliving his prognosis by about 2 years, if I remember correctly. And it does leave a big hole in the gaming landscape. Now, I only got to know about Totalbiscuit through my participation in Gamergate, but the fact that he had the respect and admiration of so many people as a consumer advocate, as a YouTuber, as a game reviewer, as a podcaster, meant I kind of got a contact respect for him. And the way in which he conducted himself, for the most part, was as an honourable and principled man, which is something I can certainly respect. John was born in 1984, which was a pretty good year for games. Marble Madness was released. Elite was released. Elite probably had more of a lasting impact on the gaming landscape. But then, in his own way, so did Totalbiscuit. Perhaps, ironically to a degree, when I think of Totalbiscuit, I mostly remember his somewhat comedic mishandling of the trap question, along with that of his cohorts who perhaps reacted even less well to the trap question. It's that, more than his actions around Gamergate that stick in my mind. Now, I'm not one to believe that the dead gain some automatic sanctity, or that the terminally ill gain some sort of automatic sanctity due to that. But there's little doubt that it is a taboo in society at large to rail on or to celebrate the death of someone, even someone as repugnant as Pat Robertson. You know, people reacted poorly to others celebrating his death. Even someone like Margaret Thatcher, who was such a horrendous blight on British society, the celebrations of her death, or the anticipation of her death, was regarded as distasteful even by people who were opposed to her views. Now, Orson Scott Card might be an unfortunately homophobic individual, but many of his stories are good, and there is a concept in one of his stories of the Speaker for the Dead, which is the title of the book as well. This is someone who is unrelated to the deceased, unrelated to the situation in which they lived and so on, and they come into a community and they investigate that person's life, and then at the funeral they give a eulogy of the truth about that person. And that's always struck me as something wonderful, something I would like to happen when I happen to die. I would like someone who doesn't know me to honestly investigate my life and then speak about it. I wasn't really close to Bain, I didn't know him that well, I didn't follow his career that well. I've taken the opportunity this morning to refresh my memory about him and to look at some of the stuff he did, so in some ways you might call me a speaker for the dead. That said, a lot of people have been using his death to make political capital, which does strike me as a little distasteful because he is being misrepresented and other people involved are being misrepresented. So unfortunately it becomes necessary as a speaker for the dead to defend someone who is beyond speaking for themselves at this point. Was Totalbiscuit part of Gamergate? No, he never really identified as part of the movement. He was concerned long before Gamergate and even after, until he finally retired due to his illness. He was long a speaker for consumers. He was an advocate for consumers, he was a critic of bad business practices, and he brought to light many problems in games media for which we owe him a debt. He also fought many battles against demonetization and other issues on YouTube for which we all owe him a debt. But he was never really part of Gamergate. He tried to walk that line between, perhaps a little too much, in that he was advocating for and supporting everything that Gamergate was asking for, but didn't want to be associated so much with the alleged harassment and so on, even in the wake of us discovering that that was all largely untrue. But that wasn't good enough for anyone. Even though he differentiated himself and he made sure he was separately calling for ethics and against censorship, even though he made it clear that he didn't support any harassment, that was enough for people to condemn him. When he was diagnosed with cancer, these kinds of people celebrated that fact, seeing it as some sort of karmic revenge for his supposed support for a supposed harassment movement. And now that he is dead, we see the same thing happening again, even amongst people he probably annoyed with his devotion to ethical and balanced and principled reporting on games in the gaming industry. Even people who have mouthpieces on the larger gaming websites and so on are speaking ill of him. And like I say, I don't support the idea that we should automatically respect the dead, but I don't think we should lie about them or celebrate in this particularly grotesque fashion when he didn't really do anything wrong. He may have made mistakes here and there, but I don't think he was actively malicious in the way that they are presenting or misrepresenting. So how we should remember him is as a consumer advocate and as someone we should try to emulate. And the people who are celebrating his death, the people who celebrated his illness, I think need to take a long, good look at themselves if they want to claim that they are the good guys. Because this behaviour, this misrepresentation, this maligning of the reputation of a man who can no longer speak for himself, these things don't strike me as the actions of good people. So let's try and remember John Bain as a principled man who tried to live out those principles in an atmosphere that was often hostile to them, certainly when he turned them on people who couldn't withstand that kind of scrutiny. And I hope you will all join me in pressing F.
Take a ride, take a shot now. There's nobody